Welcome back to the Shufflin's blog. Today I have Sterling Torress here, and she's going to give us a little bit more into our mindful moments segment. So I'm super excited to be interviewing her. And before we get started, I just want to pass it off to her. And if you want to just give us a little bit more about yourself, Sterling.
Hi everyone, my name is Sterling. I live out here in Las Vegas and I'm 26.
Amazing. So just to get right into the questions, this is something obviously I think a lot of people would love to know is how long have you been shuffling and what exactly influenced your journey to start shuffling?
Cool. Well, I learned how to do the simple running man back when Party Rock came out. I know it's cringy to even admit that, but that
Oh
was
my
back.
gosh, it's amazing though. It's still a gateway, right?
Yeah. I was like, what is shuffling? And then I discovered the underground in 2013 or 14,
Oh,
whatever year that came out. But I didn't start taking shuffling seriously until 2016, and what really sparked that was Elena Cruz. Like, surprise, surprise. I found her, and then obviously I was just immediately obsessed with her. And then I ended up meeting her at an expo while she was working it. And then I went into the bathroom with one of my best friends, and I was like, "We're gonna learn how to shuffle," and that's that. And
oh,
then here
that's
I
so
am,
amazing.
getting to know Elena and like having her be one of like my friends, and she knows us all the time. I feel like I like hype her up too much, where I'm like fangirling. But yeah, it's the way that she moves, and then obviously like through knowing Elena and following her, I stumbled upon Van Seco, and she was one of those expanders for me as well.
For sure. That's awesome. And now I see that you kind of have a wide range of shufflers that you've either collabed with or you get to see because you're so lucky you're so close to LA, which I feel like all the shufflers are all out in that in that area. So you can
Yeah.
often like meet and like interact with so many shufflers down there.
Yeah, it's nice to live in Vegas because I personally, looking back now, how much I wanted to move to California. Now I'm like, no way, I would not go back there at all. I would only come to visit here and there, but I get to be in Vegas where I'm really secluded and isolated, and I like my space.
Yeah, for sure. Cause it's if you wanted to drive to LA, it's like what about 3, 4 hours?
Yeah, it's like up to 4 hours, maybe less.
Okay. So like if you want to be like, throwing yourself into the action of things, like you can always like drive there too, or like flying is probably
Yeah.
pretty fast. But I feel like it's nice to kind of be in your element and like in your area and not so bombarded because a lot of people have told me LA is a very hectic place.
Intense. It's
Yeah.
very intense.
I've never been, but I'd love to check it out.
Oh, you've never been? Oh, we should
No,
go.
no, yeah, I'd love to go. I mean, I think shuffling as a whole, like because so much of it comes from California and the development, especially in the shuffling and the shapes realm. I feel like there's been so much progression in that area, and so many, I want to say, longtime shufflers reside there. So it's just an
Mm,
interesting mix and environment for sure. So
definitely.
yeah. Um, so tell me a little bit more about your footwork classes. How long have you been instructing and what exactly made you want to start instructing?
So I started instructing this year, a week before COVID, like lockdown happened. Honestly, when I was personal training, when I was coaching, it just, I don't know, like teaching just always sat really well with me. Always. It's always been something that I wanted to do. I've always wanted to guide people to, something that was going to help them make themselves feel better. I wanted to be a social worker, then a psychologist, and then I became a personal trainer. And those things all still really sit well with me. It's just not the thing that I feel like the most aligned with right now. And when I thought about teaching footwear classes, there's a part of me that felt I wasn't equipped, right? Because all of the credentials that we would need to be a shuffle cutting shapes instructor. There's a lot of respect that goes into that culture. So all of those things really ran through my head, but I knew that I have the capabilities to be an instructor, to tell someone how to do a move based on my knowledge with personal training and just my experience. And I think I'm doing a pretty good job. I love teaching, and I don't know, I don't ever really doubt myself in that area.
That's awesome. So you've always had kind of like a life calling towards teaching, you would say? Because I know you said you were personal training before as well, too. So instruction has always been like a big part of your life?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I feel really good when I'm there, when I'm in that space.
That's awesome. I feel like when we're kind of more in our own personal alignment too, like when you're just doing things that feel right and feel good, I think others that you're helping as well feel that same type of purpose in what you're doing. So, I mean, I can see it. I definitely, I started noticing when you were posting about your workshops, and it really sucks about the timing because I know it's been definitely an interesting year for teachers having to try and recollect and now have to do things either online or with smaller class sizes. So,
Yeah, I just canceled my last one. It was supposed to be last week. I was so sad,
oh,
but
so you guys, did you guys go into like more restrictions? Is that why, or was it getting really bad?
yeah, I just wasn't sure because they switched the restrictions to you have to have the mask on throughout in class, even with the 6 feet apart and stuff. And I understand that absolutely, but I just wasn't sure how people were going to respond with having a mask on during shuffling. That's like suffocating.
Yeah, and I can attest to that because I know when we had the restrictions here, I mean, now we're in full blown lockdown, but when I was in the studio, I had to wear like a face shield and like a mask and everything. And it's very restrictive when you're trying to dance. So I
Yeah.
definitely feel that I'm sure the timing will be right once everything settles with the pandemic, and hoping that maybe 2021 will bring better times for instructors for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
So I know we kind of touched on this a little bit, but your fitness coaching, you were doing personal training prior to becoming a shuffle instructor, or you call it a footwork instructor, right? Because you tend to incorporate lots of realms of different types of movement. How has this impacted your approach to teaching, having that knowledge and that background in personal training and coaching?
Oh, I just touched on it. Sorry.
That's
I got
okay.
a little bit ahead of myself. Yeah, so with training people, I was doing group trainings too, so it was already kind of in the same, like it looked so similar already, just telling people like it's just different methods in terms of approach with dancing versus actually training. But I feel like it's impacted so positively on my teaching capabilities because not only do I get to understand the how to explain the actual movements and understand the culture, but I'm also able to understand like the anatomy of how to incorporate those moves. So I definitely think it's helped, and it allows me to be more detailed with my students.
For sure, for sure. Because I think having just a knowledge of anatomy and like what muscle to use in which instance is super helpful. And would you say there are more benefits to being a shuffle instructor versus just personal training? Like, what are the differences you find? Like, is there something more artistic about it or expressive?
Um, it's hard to compare. With training, you would need less people, obviously, so that you can keep up with them and be more intimate. But with training, there's a benefit of being creative because when let's say you're coaching at a gym, there's things that you can't utilize, so you have to get creative with your workouts, with your groups, with your group of students. And the same thing with teaching and instructing is you just want to go with an intention of what you want to incorporate for that class and what you want to leave them when they walk out of the class. So yeah, getting creative is definitely the basis.
That's awesome. For sure. Because I feel like I've noticed that like there's also been other instructors that popped up that have the training background. So it's interesting to see like how the two kind of go hand in hand, and how the benefits of even working out apply to shuffling. Like, I mean, I feel like even just telling your students specific types of workouts or exercises that will assist in their shuffling process too is
Yeah,
probably helpful as well, right? Because strengthening stamina, I feel like it all comes into play when you're personal training as well.
absolutely. Yeah, there's specifics to it. I feel like there's certain specific training methodologies that will directly benefit just shuffling and cutting shapes.
And like off the top of your head, like what would be like the number one exercise you feel like people need?
Anything high intense. So what I was doing during quarantine was plyometric training, and it's just using your body for one, and you use your stamina and your agility to change direction, your agility, increasing your agility with plyometrics, so that when you're shuffling, you can change your movements a lot faster.
Oh, okay. And this is called plyometrics, you said, right? Uh,
Plyometrics.
So definitely if you're watching this, look up plyometrics.
Yes, get on
Have you
it.
ever done like a video on something like this or?
Yeah, when I was before I had really decided to take a pause on personal training, I was sending my email list. If anybody wants to subscribe to my email list, they're still coming in. Just training, like free training, training days for plyos.
Oh, that's super awesome. So that way people can incorporate that into, their fitness regimen and then in turn help their shuffling as a whole.
Yeah.
Because I think that so often, at least I get this a lot with my students, is that they think that shuffling is the only training that they need, especially if they're shuffling a lot or on a regular basis. So I think education on, what exercises or what you can be doing in the fitness realm is important because it really truly affects the strength of your ability.
Yeah. Yeah, and like stretching and, doing a proper cool down, a proper warm up, just everything to maintain the integrity of your life.
Yeah, for sure. I think stretching is a big one too, because often people just think like they can, practice at such a high intensity and then, not stretch or cool down or anything. And then you'll get like either sore or tense or like you don't want to practice the rest of the week because you're in so much pain. So
Yeah,
I feel like
definitely.
stretching is a big one for sure. I think yoga too is a great practice. I see a
Yoga.
lot of shufflers do that as well.
Yeah, I just don't understand how before I would never have a proper stretch. Like stretching is like the biggest thing to just stay healthy in general, but with shuffling, like there's no way that you would be able to stay a healthy individual if you continuously don't stretch before and after.
I am in total agreement. And I think coming from someone who you probably are shuffling often, I would say probably on a daily basis, right?
Yeah.
So do you notice when you're not stretching and when you're not taking that time for self-care for your body?
Yeah. There's times where I know that I hadn't stretched in a couple of days, and I would tell myself that I can't shuffle that day, and I just need to spend that whole hour just stretching. Because if I don't, like, you can tell too that there's like areas around your body, like let's say you're cutting shapes this day, the muscles around your knees are so tense, and then let's say you're just like shuffling, then like your hips, like your hip flexor, the joint in your hip. Yeah, there's so many things that can happen.
Yeah, I think hip flexors are a big one. And like anything to do with calves or hamstrings. I feel like so often, like especially with cutting shapes intensive footwork, I feel like the preciseness and the just like overall like muscle technique that's involved, like if you're not stretching, you notice such a big difference. And it's good that I hear that from you too, because often I'll have the same thing where like a couple days go by and I haven't stretched fully or I haven't just like taken that time to rest my body, and you feel like you can't continue or you can't be there for your students as well because you're not like at your 100%.
Yeah, absolutely. I felt that.
Yeah, so it's good to hear you say that too. So if you're watching this and you don't stretch, you got to get
stretching.
on. So I've seen you incorporate meditation on a regular basis, on your socials, or it's just been something I often see you partaking in. When did you begin this practice and what influenced you to do so?
Yeah, I love that we're talking about this. This is my favorite part. So I came across meditation back in 2015. So a couple years back, one of my friends was like, have you ever meditated before? And I was like, what's meditation? And then he showed me, and there's like little things that he had like sprinkled upon me that sparked my curiosity. And it wasn't until I finally moved out of my place, my parents' place, which felt so liberating, at that age. I started to feel a certain feeling that I wouldn't say it was like depression. It was just like a whole set of emotions. I think moving out of your parents' place is a very powerful move and on an emotional level. And so when I moved out, I had no idea what I was going to experience. And I was in my bathtub having like a nice bath, just treating myself to some self-care. I started reading The Power of Now, and
Ooh, such a good book. Oh my God.
I'm sure I'm really glad that you read it. Yeah. And it like changed everything, as I'm sure it did for so many people. And it was my spiritual awakening. And I remember just practicing little things. And when I was taking my baths, and I was taking my baths every single day, sometimes twice a day, and those were my meditations. And then I just remember at like each day that came by, when I started to do these little like increments of meditation, I would start to sob. I was just sobbing like every single session. And I was like getting out of my bathtub with like my towel, and I would just lay on the bathroom floor and just like cry. And then like little did I know that I was doing all this healing in my meditation practice. And yeah, like flash forward a couple years later, and like I'm not crying as much anymore, but I'm doing it still.
Well, I feel like sometimes it's necessary too, like with all the built up energy that we experience nowadays. So many things on a regular basis, we're always doing, we're never just like pausing. So I feel like sometimes you need that release, and it feels good after. Like when you've had a good cry, it feels nice.
It feels so good.
And
sometimes, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say that sometimes like there's no reason to cry, but you just need to cry. Like there is so much power in just releasing, and you don't really need to understand why or hold back why, and just let it go.
I agree, because sometimes it's just like a way of your body letting out energy, like whatever's there. Because we have blockages. Sometimes we just need to. Sometimes you'll cry and you'll be like, I don't even know where that came from.
Yeah, yes.
It's funny that you say you meditate in the bath too, because I know that there's a lot of like purifying qualities when it comes to water, and just like the cleansing abilities of water. Yeah. So, and often I feel like when energy is stronger, like I often kind of like follow the moon cycles myself with energy. So I feel like it kind of just heightens your awareness of your meditation, often even if you're like meditating in the tub. I don't know. It's like, I feel like it's a good way to start for someone who's new to meditation as well.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I love that you keep up with the moon cycles. That actually, I read one of your captions and I was like, oh yeah, like of course, like why haven't I like focused so much on the moon? And yeah, yesterday I was like sobbing so much, and I was like, oh, it's a full moon.
Yeah, and we feel more, we feel the pulling energy more when the moon is either in like a full moon or in a new moon phase. So often I'll have so many friends being like, oh, it's a full moon, that's why I feel this way. But it's actually like a real thing, because the moon is closer to Earth, then we're actually experiencing more of a pulling energy, because our bodies are made up of 60% water. So like you can feel like you need to just let something out, or like you need to have a good cry, or like maybe you feel like you just had like the most wacky day ever.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting though, your meditation practices, like how far they've taken you, for sure. Yeah. And now do you do it on a regular basis?
I do. Yeah, I do it morning and night. I have to have my little routine. It's funny. I have Chase. He's my significant person, and he's the person that needs to wake up, just grab a coffee, and gets to work. And I'm the person that needs at least 3 hours so that I can just wake up at a calm pace, read my book, go into meditation, and then journal.
That's a really, really great habit to have in the morning too, because do you find it helps you start your day off on the right note?
Yeah, I definitely feel it's so benefiting that I love to do it, so that when I don't do it, I try really hard to not get so caught up in the fact that I haven't done it, you know, because it is like a dose of mine, that it's a practice of mine that I feel okay. I've never actually said this to anybody, but I've just felt like I do have this like anxiety that I deal with, and I don't want to go to like a therapist and like talk through it or whatever, talk about it, or like establish that I have anxiety. It's just something that I deal with. I feel like the whole world has anxiety, you know, like it's weird that certain people have been diagnosed with anxiety, when I feel like the whole population has experienced anxiety, you know?
Yeah, as humans, for sure.
Yeah, so I do feel if I spend like a day without going into my practice, I do feel like like I'm losing my center a lot. So yeah, it's really special.
That's awesome. So I feel like getting into that practice, for someone who hasn't started to meditate, would you say a habit is a good thing to start? Like set a time in the day where you're going to be doing your meditation, whether it's 5, 10, 20. I know some people that meditate for an hour, whatever that is. Do you think forming a habit that way is the best way to start doing it?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you've never meditated before, I would say the best way for you to start is to just take little moments. Like, let's say you're at the grocery store and you're waiting in line, or you're in the car waiting in traffic. Like, any moments where you're like, wow, this is taking forever, that is like a note to be like, oh yeah, let me just try it right now.
Mm-hmm. When you have nothing better to do but sit with yourself.
Yeah.
Your thoughts.
And
do you
embrace
find
the moment.
Yeah. Do you find sometimes you're easily able to go into a meditative state and others not so much?
Yeah, it gets tricky. Like, let's say that you're around people who don't really know that you go into your practice. Like, I'm sure you deal with this too. Like, there's moments of you don't want people to stop and ask you, like, what's wrong, or what's up. And that's funny. That's their first instinct, is to ask you what's wrong. And all I'm doing is just closing my eyes and just breathing. And it sounds like something's wrong. And so, yeah, sometimes it's hard to do it around people that I know or people that are around me, as opposed to me being in my car with Chase. Like, Chase knows that I do that a lot. So yeah.
That's awesome. And I definitely think breathing too, like, we get so nervous as humans when we hear someone heavy breathing.
Yeah.
It's like, that's the best way to kind of start your meditation, is just like focus on your breath, for sure. So that's a really good tip though, for sure. Like those little mindful moments, as we call it. So kind of going into mindfulness, do you think mindfulness and meditation are interlinked? And would you say that you can't have one without the other?
Yeah, I would say that. The whole point of meditation is to create mindfulness, it's like this muscle you have to build. And, we're not really taught how to build that muscle. So when we are in the meditation, and let's say that you are having a really hard time relaxing, that is your mindfulness. You are doing it the right way. You are meditating because you're understanding how tense you are. And then over time, the more mindful you become, the more relaxed you can become.
Mm-hmm. And does it help with your emotional reaction to things?
Oh my gosh, yes. Yes. And it's still tough because you have these little things that you've conditioned yourself to, and like in an environment to react to. And for me, for instance, I'm going through this healing process of my childhood. And right now I'm realizing how much of an impulse I have with things, especially with like significant others, like Chase. He loves me so much. He deals with my impulsiveness. But I'm realizing, as I work on my mindfulness and my reaction to the world with people that I'm not so close with, like back when I was working and stuff, working on my impulsivity there has helped me so much, but it also has started to project onto my relationship. And I'm realizing that part is engraved from when my mom was like fighting with my dad all the time, or when my sisters were fighting with each other all the time. So practicing mindfulness is still a very hard thing to do when you have those that conditioning. So yeah, it's still difficult, but it's the way for you to bring awareness to reactions, because it still is a muscle you still have to build.
Mm-hmm. Oh, speaking of it on like a muscle, that's a great way to put it, because I feel like your natural reaction to things as humans, we have these like built-in conditioning that allows us to react a certain way in situations. And I feel like often that gut reaction, it kind of causes sometimes further emotional problems, or like it makes you feel like you don't have control over your just body's processes and the way you deal with things in general. So would you say mindfulness like really assists in that as well, as just like reducing that level of conditioning so that you can think twice about how you react in a situation?
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. Yeah, 100%. And the
sure.
Mindfulness, speaking about the body too, if you're able to control, or not control, if you're able to learn how to understand your reactions, and basically bringing in mindfulness in the moments where you feel the most angry or upset or reactive, you're able to relax your body's chemical process. And yeah, it just brings so much health benefits in doing that.
For sure. Like reducing your stress levels probably is a big one, right?
Yeah.
I feel like we often feel so much stress because we just deal with situations on autopilot, and then that just accumulates and accumulates, and then we just feel like we're just a chaotic mess as opposed to feeling grounded and just like mindful of what's going on around us.
Yeah.
For sure. So I'm glad you see that as well, because I feel like more people even just being exposed to the idea of meditation, and how it can impact them in their regular daily life, and over time the amount of benefits that you see overall, like it's too hard not to ignore for society. And that's really why I wanted to talk about this with you too, is because I feel like sometimes within the shuffle community there are moments that are very reactive, and I feel like just taking that step back, no matter what situation you're in, would just allow for better communication as a whole, and just also like expanding the, I guess, like the global consciousness, right, of all of us together, that unity.
Couldn't agree more on that. Yeah.
So, have meditation and mindfulness impacted your shuffling? What benefits do you see in terms of creativity, footwork flow, overall motivation to practice in general? Can you speak a little bit more on that?
I love that question. Such a pretty question. It makes me think back the specific time I felt so unworthy and so in my head about shuffling. I just wanted to shuffle, and I was like, it was in the beginning stages, and I just really wanted to like get a good session in, and it wasn't happening. And then I just told myself, well, what would happen if I just didn't think? I just didn't, I just, just throw myself in there. So what I did was I grabbed a blunt, smoked my J, or it was a J, not a blunt, or whatever, not like it matters. But I smoked, and then I just turned up the music in the garage, and then all I did was just brought in mindfulness to every step, every running man, and it allowed me to unlock something about myself. Like I don't even know if I posted it. I think I posted it. There's this video, and like I'm wearing all red, and I just like unlocked my flow in that day, and I realized that I was never supposed to look like anybody else. And it's a natural thing. When I say it out loud, I realized I felt what it was like to be me on the dance floor, and that only came out of me being mindful about my steps, or me being just present with myself in the garage.
That's awesome. I think that so many people are searching for the way to move, and often we get too caught up in how everyone else is moving and how, how their journey is. And a lot of the time this leads to either self-consciousness or just like never feeling, like you said, like you're amounting to your worth. And so just taking that step back, and I agree, I think any type of way of expressing or outlet that you have, I mean, I live in Canada, so smoking weed is legal, so I'm all for it. I think it's much better than drinking, especially if you're a shuffler and you're wanting to get out of your head a little bit. I'm totally with you on that page. And I think just like finding that way to just get out of your head, whether you need to force it in the beginning or not, it's totally a personal choice. But I think overall, like just having that type of mentality going into a freestyle, it probably makes such a difference. And from there, were you able to apply that consistently, or did it take time to be able to find that place?
Yeah, it took a long time. It's just like the little tiny glimpses that I can catch myself in, and then it really just comes back to music. I feel like that's like the best way to go into like your mindfulness and your meditation, because when you're moving meditation is when you focus on the music, and you just understand that you're telling a story as a dancer. Like if you want to become a shuffler or a shaper, just understand that you're trying to figure out what kind of storyteller you are on the dance floor.
That is such a great way to put it, because I've heard other people put it in a way where like they get into almost like this personality or this character as their like that's their like shuffle character, right? Because I feel like when you kind of start to create this persona as a dancer, it's all you, but it's about like shaping and crafting that which will later kind of adapt into your style, right? Because I'm sure
Yeah.
that started allowing you to kind of start molding your style, because I see like over the past year or so that your style has tremendously become your own, and you have those qualities of just like developing your style in such a unique way. So would you say again that mindfulness practice really helped you with that?
Yeah, 100%.
That's awesome. um do you
Thank you, by the way.
what?
Thanks, by the way.
Oh, no problem. Honestly, I feel like we need to like kind of build each other up more and like talk about, the people that are really putting in the work. And it's it's nice to see those that, I guess I don't want to say like those who are famous, but the people who have the larger followings, that they're, not just in it for themselves, but they're constantly serving the community and showing others that same path to their own personal journey. And I think that when it comes to like idols in the community, it's really good to follow people that promote this kind of process, because we're so often like we have this like end goal as shufflers, and I hear this all the time from people who are just learning, is that like I want to be like this person and I want to do this, but there's so much dedication and work that goes into that, right? So sharing that process with other people is so important, so that they know like, oh, I'm not just going to be perfect overnight.
Yeah. Yeah, and if you want to take it seriously, like if you really want to take it seriously, it's painful, but it's a beautiful painful. Like you go through so much, so many blockages, and it's a really long journey because, and you'll see this as you go along your shuffle cutting shapes journey, that you're like, this is taking much longer time than I thought it was going to take. And like years down the road you'll realize why, and it's never ending, and finding your flow is a whole new experience. Because I think people are in the process of finding their flow, they just don't know it yet because they're so focused and fixated on that one person that they want to look like.
And then once they start to realize that there's individual qualities that they have that are so unique, compared to anyone else in the world, I feel like zoning in on those qualities for yourself and starting to appreciate and show gratitude for your process. I feel like that's so important, which again goes back to that mindfulness, is like just letting yourself sometimes not think and just zone out. Like I know there's so much thinking involved for most of the learnings of shuffling. Like there's so much that goes into learning the technique and how to freestyle, and we're constantly trying to juggle a million things as we're dancing. But there should always be those moments where we freestyle with just no expectations. You just go in fully mindful and present and just see what happens with our body. And usually you surprise yourself when that happens.
I've also was going to mention with mindfulness, the beautiful thing about practicing mindfulness is that you can introduce a personality that you've seen or you've like looked up to, and you can bring what that would look like or what that would feel like and bring that into your mindfulness and become that personality. But what you actually portray on the outside doesn't look like that personality, it just looks different on you. And so practicing that mindfulness by looking at someone else's example, that I feel like that's what's helped me develop my flow too, is I would take in a little bit of the vibe from Elena, or a little bit of the vibe from like Van, or a little bit of the vibe from like whoever I saw that day, but it just became my own because I was doing what felt good for my body and like with mindfulness.
That's awesome. That's really awesome. Because at the end of the day, even if you're channeling like someone else's vibe, it's still going to look so different in how you portray it yourself. So it still becomes unique when you do it. Because even, when you're learning a routine or like you're practicing a collab, how you do one move, and then when you're like working with someone else, how they do that same move or their tendency for that move can be like completely different. Like it may look completely different on one person versus the other.
Definitely, yeah.
For sure. So I know you meditate and have incorporated that now into your shuffle workshops as well. What has the response been like for people integrating meditation into a shuffle workshop?
I think everybody loves it. It's been really pretty to I say pretty a lot, but I think it's really pretty because it's like light. I think it's really pretty to see people enjoy it and really want to be there. You know, I hosted a meditation, the first one, the meditation and shuffle class. I hosted them separately because um, I didn't expect people to want to do the meditation from the shuffling, but everybody who came to the shuffle class purchased the ticket for meditation, and I was like, whoa, I was like, everybody's staying for the meditation. That's so cool.
That's
And
really awesome.
yeah, so I really love it. It's a little tricky right now for me to consistently do the meditations because, you know, I'm sure you agree too with doing meditations are something that's very sacred to both of us and many people. So I don't want to make it something that's like a market, you know. I don't want to take that sacredness away from it, and so I make sure that when I host those meditation classes, I'm like, I've taken care of myself, I've centered myself, and I feel like I'm in a good place to guide someone. But yeah, I love it so far.
So it's definitely like aligned with your purpose, is kind of bringing that meditation element into people's lives.
Yeah, yeah, I really want to provide something for someone, and in order for me to do that, I have to be centered myself and feel completely um, authentic to myself, you know.
For sure, because I do agree. There's like a nice balance between like doing it because you want to expose people to it, and then that like commercialization, as you're talking about, is like you don't want to take that sacred element away from it, but at the same time, in order to introduce it to people, you kind of have to like put it in their faces a little bit and be like, this is something important to me, and I feel like it should be important to every single person in the population, right? Like everyone can benefit from it.
That's very true. I love that you said that. Yeah, I've been really back and forth about it.
That's awesome. And would you say, like, do you host the meditation before or after the class?
Afterwards.
Okay, so it's like a nice, like, calm ending to
Yeah,
how,
and your blood's pumping. Everything's like, it's just easier to feel everything all at once.
for sure. So how do you generally lead it?
I feel like every time I've done it, it's been such a seamless and natural thing because of the intention that I've set in before my meditation starts. And I don't know, I just guide it, and I have like I have this knowing of everybody's on the same wavelength. I have to be very in my center because
Mhm.
I feel like I use my empathic energy and powers. And I'm sure you're an empath too.
Yeah.
I can sense it on you.
I
Yeah.
feel like being an empath is super helpful when guiding like a group versus just like doing it individually. Because, like you said, there's so much more that goes into it when you're trying to kind of read the energy, but also make sure that you're in that complete alignment to guide that process. Because,
Yeah.
yeah, the last thing you would want to do is be feeling like stressed or frustrated or anything going into something like that. So I totally agree. I think it's definitely something that comes with just like intuitively knowing. And when you're finished the meditation, like what would you say? Like, how does it feel like with everyone there and partaking in it?
It feels incredible. It feels like we left and came back.
Another planet.
Yeah, it feels amazing. I love having people share afterwards what they experienced. Not everybody wants to share, but it's beautiful because I think they end up pushing themselves to share, and sometimes it gets emotional. And it's just a beautiful thing to see someone get emotional because you just know how much they've probably held in and like didn't realize how much they've had to release. I've had a I've had a couple friends who I've taken them to my little corner where I meditate, and at like parties in the middle of the party, you know, and they'll just start to cry, and it's freaking beautiful.
That's really awesome, for sure. Because I feel like there's a lot of beauty in, even if it's just like you and one other person, but solo meditation versus meditating in a group or with other people is, I feel like you're channeling even more energy through that process. So whoever is around you, you almost feel this sense of, like you said, whatever emotions come up, and like people who haven't done this before or don't do it regularly might feel a lot more strongly about their experience than others. And of course, it all really depends on like you know, your life in general and what's been going on. So, but I definitely would love to check out one of your classes. I think it's really great that you're doing it. Are you hosting them over Zoom too?
I stopped because of classes being able to be in person, but I'm gonna start back up again because the lockdown and the restrictions. So yeah, soon it'll be online.
Okay, amazing. So, if people are looking out for your workshops and classes too, where can they find them as well, just so they know?
Yeah, just through my Instagram at Sterling Torress, I'll have everything, any announcement on there. It's STERLING TORRESS.
Amazing. Okay, awesome. Um, the last thing I want to talk about is something I've seen in your bio for a little while, the wavy self. And I know you have some plans regarding this brand, right? So do you want to just kind of share a little bit about this endeavor and what your plans are for this?
Yes, thank you for asking. Just I'll keep it brief because I'm realizing how much of the process is to do something like this. So the Wavy Self is going to be my merchandise line. Just based on telling a story about what I believe in and how I believe we should live our life. And the wavy self is a great depiction of that. The wavy self serves as a reminder to be in a state of flow always. And whenever you come across a situation that doesn't feel like it was planned or brings a reaction out of you, just maintain your wavy self and move on and flow through.
That's so beautiful.
Yeah, I'm
So
excited.
how did this idea come to you? Like, did it come through meditation or?
Actually, yes, it was during my meditations. Yeah, I was meditating and I was like, when I go into my meditations, especially when you've done it for so long, you start to realize when you have this empty space, you can start to bring in your creativity because when we're mindful is when we can get the most creative. So I started to think like, how can I tell a story, like be an artist in this type of realm and merch in the merchandise line. That's so crazy to even say out loud. Um, yeah, so I want to be able to tell stories, but also be able to use like T-shirts as a reminder of if people were to read your shirt or whatever that you were wearing on the back, it would say something that would be like, "Oh, that's such a great way to look at life," and then they can go on about their day and have a
Ah,
better understanding.
so a daily reminder, not only for yourself, but even for strangers or like people you encounter,
Yeah,
taking that little message and applying it to their daily life or even just kind of pondering on it.
yeah,
That's really cool. It's a really cool way to apply, I feel like everything that you've been doing and just like, again, going back to that alignment and that like soul's calling and the universe just kind of like popping an idea into your head one day, being like, I feel like you need to do this. And sometimes I feel like those ideas just come, like you said, when you're in your most creative element, but when you're also making space, because
yeah.
you find it's hard to stay creative or to continue being in that creative mindset when you're just nonstop chaotic in your mind or like there's too much stress in your life. It's harder to get in that place, right?
Yeah, I mean, especially being on social media too, like it's just really tricky when you have so many of your girlfriends or, guy friends who are doing kind of similar things, and everybody's like on the same wavelength. When I thought about the wavy self, I was like starting to post on it. And then I started to realize like other girlfriends of mine are also coming out with merch. And I was like, oh, we're all on the same wavelength. Yeah. So it gets tricky because you start to think like, oh, this is something that I really want to like spend time on. And based on my like childhood trauma, that I bring it up a lot because I'm dealing with it right now and I'm healing through it. So it shows me how much of my low self-worth I was carrying on, and being on social media is like a huge checkpoint for that. So it definitely gets tricky, but you just have to know what to do so that you can always stay in your self-worth.
For sure. And I think because you touched on social media in general, do you think sometimes this takes a toll on your mental health when you're too heavily involved with what's going on in the media world in general?
Yeah, I mean, I see certain things coming up. I'm sure you've seen certain things come up too, and I check myself in all the time. And before it wasn't as like chaotic because I didn't have such a large following, and it was just really nice to be intimate with people. And then as you grow a following and stuff, it does, yeah, you really have to set boundaries. And for me, I stopped consuming so much, and that's when I started to feel more creative, was when I stopped looking into people's lives and, taking a dive into their emotional um, experience. So especially now, I'm going on a phone detox, I think after this phone call, and I'm just shutting
Oh,
off my phone. Yeah.
wow. I'm happy to be the last person you talked to for that.
Same, this is nice.
That's awesome. So what would your advice be then to people? Because I feel like this really is a topic that is underlying to a lot of issues just in the world in general, is that, and I don't know if you've seen The Social Dilemma, but I feel like after watching that, it was like my mind really started to go to this place of like, social media is so great because we're able to connect with so many people, but at the same time, it puts us in a spot where we're always comparing and judging and, like you said, worrying so much about other people's lives instead of our own, and it's so easy to get consumed in that. So what would your advice be, just like, daily habits or things to do for people who are getting a little bit overwhelmed with the social world and don't know how to handle that?
Yeah. Okay, so I'm like an extremist. So what I would do is, if you feel like you're at all going into this like toxic addiction with your phone, shut it off. Like, the power that you gain back from turning off your phone and putting it in a drawer, and waiting until you get that glimpse of like, oh, let me grab my phone. Wait until that moment happens, and then you can really start to see your habits of grabbing your phone. So like, if you're going through something right now, just shut it off and put it away, just for 5 hours. Just for 5 hours, nothing happens. The world won't crash down in 5 hours. What I tend to do is I just tell the important people in my life, like, hey, I'm shutting off my phone. Don't hit me up. And then I just put it away, and then I won't touch it for days. And that that's so empowering to me, to just do that, instead of doing that as an alternative. Let's say that you're a really busy person, I would say don't touch your phone for the first 2 hours of the day, and then don't touch your phone for the last 2 hours every day.
Okay, so that reset can happen
Mm.
at the end of your day, and then in the beginning of the day, you're not starting off where you're like throwing yourself into the wolves, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good practice. I feel like there's a few people I've talked to in the coaching industry as well that believe that you should not be on your phone or any electronic device close to bedtime, and as
Yeah.
well, like right when you wake up in the morning, because that just sets our mind up to be wired that way the rest of the day.
Yeah, and also because when you're going to sleep and you're trying to sleep right after watching TV, the blue rays will not let you go to sleep for
Yeah.
at least another 30 minutes to an hour.
Yeah.
Um,
I feel like
yeah.
even just wearing like those filtering glasses nowadays, like for me myself, I wear them all the time because that those rays that hit our eyes, and then you're just feeling like your eyes are just wired when you're trying to like close your eyes and go to sleep, is just not a good feeling.
Just even thinking about it, like my head will start to hurt from watching or from looking at my computer too much. Like, I can't even continue on with my work.
For sure. So definitely taking time to unplug. Self-care maybe is something super
Okay.
important. I feel like we do so many things that we feel like we need to do, and
Yeah.
we never kind of insert those moments where we're like, we need to do something for ourselves too.
Yes. Oh, I feel like I have to mention this. I've been doing this. I've been doing this recently to myself, and it's been helping so much. If you're going through something with social media or like self-worth and something's being challenged within you, I'm not even kidding. If you're driving, look at yourself in the rearview mirror and hype yourself up. Like, tell yourself the things that you would want someone else to tell you when you're feeling in that low self-worth. Like, I did that to myself the other day. I was like yelling at myself. I was like, you're a badass bitch. There's no need for you to feel this way.
I love that.
I walked out of my car and I felt so good.
That's amazing. So like being your own like hype person and like hyping yourself up through situations. Because
Yeah.
I feel like it's so easy to just get in that mindset where you believe, things that you hear, or you start to kind of judge yourself or compare yourself to others. And then there's just like this cycle, and it's like never ending. You almost like keep going deeper and deeper.
Yeah, and then it's getting engraved the more you don't attend to it.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess being self-aware and going back to mindfulness, I feel like overall, even when we're having those rough times or those times where we know we're being too critical, or we know we're comparing ourselves, or maybe we're judging other people too, because sometimes I get in that mindset and I'm like, whoa, like I'm doing this thing where I'm judging, and it could be a good thing, it could be a bad thing, but no matter the case, like I feel like just removing that, or even just like being aware of that and then just taking a step back is probably the number one thing, because when you're not aware of it, it's just going to keep happening.
Yeah, so much true.
So I'm glad we kind of had this conversation regarding mindfulness and meditation, and just like manifesting as well. I feel like is such a, I want to say like a term that's used like way too frequently, and sometimes like without intention as well.
I agree.
Just getting to the root of these ideas and knowing that, no, it's not just a commercial thing. Like these are actually practices that are sacred to people, and finding that inner reflection. Spirituality in general is just so guided by this. Like whatever your spirituality is, I feel like it's so important to incorporate these practices into it.
Yeah, and even if you're like, if you don't believe in anything, just having these practices is, why wouldn't you do it? You know, this is like teaching you how to live in your most biggest self-worth. Like I want to say highest self, but I feel like that one's also used too much, you know, like it's watered down. Like the meaning of it is, people don't know the meaning of it, they just like say the meaning of it, like they just say the words and say what has been regurgitated. So yeah, I agree. Like even if you're not spiritual, doing something that's going to put you, that's going to help you feel at your best potential, like why wouldn't you do it?
Yeah, like when there's really no negatives to doing it, other than like, oh, you have to maybe wake up 10 minutes or 20 minutes earlier in order to incorporate that practice. Maybe if you're doing it in the morning, you know, there's so many ways that you can incorporate it just very simply in the beginning that will start to make an impact in your life. And chances are when you start, like most people I've talked to who've started meditation or at least like dabbled in it, none of them have told me like, oh my God, I hated it.
Yeah.
I've never heard somebody say that.
Exactly.
It's like an instant understanding that this is going to be a practice that will change your life.
Yeah, sure. And it's proven, it's science. It's just science. Like there's proof that this is good for you.
For sure. And it's nice to hear that people who are very popular within social media, someone like yourself, that's incorporating these practices on a daily basis, you know, it also lends itself to abundance. Like we do these things because we care for ourselves. We put in that time to reflect and do the inner work, like you said. You know, when we're working through trauma, when we're working through anxiety, it's just something that helps us become our most authentic self, I feel like I want to say, because then you can do what you need to do and share that with the world. Then you can be Sterling Torress, and you can inspire us, and you can be that authentic person that we look up to, right? So for other people, I want that too. I want every single person to feel like they don't need to be somebody else, and that they can be themselves.
And you don't have to be this like toxic positive person to get what you want in life. Like you have to go through the healing process. And yeah, like right now going through my healing process, it's been super difficult, and I started doing it when we were moving, so it was like the worst timing. But yeah, I've been crying like every single day.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
but it's like the timing is never right. You just have to go through it.
So true. Yeah, it's beautiful. It's painful, but it's beautiful. Healing is painful.
Yeah, with that pain and we're being able to release whatever you're holding on to, it just makes space for the new and for new thoughts to happen and better practices in your life. So I'm sure, you know, whatever you're going through, it will pass, and you'll be able to let go of it, right? Because that's so important. And I'm glad you're doing that work, because often we just push it down and we fight the universe and we say, no, now's not a good time. Now's not a good time.
Yeah, like you're like, I hate this. Like, why did I do this today? And then you're like, oh wait, that's why. After you're done crying, you're like, oh yeah, that's why. Because I feel so much better now. No, yeah, I mean the healing that I've been doing has been super good. Like I've already felt like I've never felt so much in my worth as ever in my life until I started doing this work.
That's amazing. That's really awesome to hear. And did it stem from your mindfulness practices and your meditation? Is that where you started coming to light with what you needed to address?
Yeah, I started doing it through my meditations, but then I started doing this hypnosis work, and it basically takes you through like your subconscious, and it helps you figure out where your conditioning came from. And obviously it all kind of started from like your childhood ages, from 0 to 7 years old, maybe up to like 14 years old. So like if anybody's listening and you've gone through like a pretty rough like childhood, then yeah, anybody actually who's gone through anything, this is the type of healing that you would want to do. It's like really intense, really, really fast, like 10 years worth of therapy kind of work. So it's a lot. It's really intense, but yeah, it's been really good so far.
That's awesome. I'm glad you're finding healing and that this practice has been helping you. I've actually heard of a few people trying hypnosis work. I've heard it brings you into your subconscious, and then I'm like a total, like, I just love anything to do with magic and like past lives. And I've heard of some people who do hypnosis therapy who actually like go into past lives and figure out like their preconditioning or like their genetic conditioning as well through hypnosis work, right? So that's really, really cool that you say you do that.
Yeah. The hypnosis that I'm doing it through, it's one of my therapists. So they basically walk you through just like anything that can pop up, like just simple traumas, not simple, but like just like the obvious traumas. And then you'll go into the hypnosis and you'll walk through the actual trauma. Like you'll walk through the whole situation again, like you're reliving it, but also implementing your higher self-worth, or like guiding yourself, or envisioning your highest self parents guiding you through that situation, and you're basically re-experiencing your traumas, but implementing the positivity in it.
Okay. So finding that healing with those particular circumstances that you found yourself in so long ago.
And then it also just goes into anything that you've learned, like let's say that you grew up with your mom looking at yourself in the mirror a lot and criticizing yourself, and then let's say that you do that now, but you don't think that that's something that is affecting you. And yeah, it's just simple things, like anything that you learned when you were little. So you can basically rewire your entire subconscious, and then that would put you in your highest self-worth, and then that would put you in your biggest manifestation powers.
Wow, that's amazing. And again, I think it goes back to just being able to live in the present moment and actually being able to fulfill your purpose. Because whenever there's something like holding us back, or we feel like we're just not able to be the best version of ourselves, then we can't do the work that's necessary. And I think that you doing this and going through this is only going to further assist the people around you too, because then that positive influence that you've been receiving from this practice and this healing work is just going to transfer onto your followers and your students and anyone that comes into contact with you. So you're not just doing this for you, you're doing this for a lot of other people that you're surrounded by, for sure.
Yeah,
that's really awesome. Yeah, no, I'm happy for you, and I'm glad that although it's a hard process, that you're able to overcome this, and that you're doing that work, because so many people refuse to do inner work and they just kind of see external issues in their lives and point the finger at everything else. But I think the internal work is the most important, and this past year has been the best time to do so. Because when have we had like a time where our society just stops,
Yeah.
Like,
I know a lot of people just talk so much crap about 2020, and I'm like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Like, this is like the best year.
Yeah, I know, like on the business side of things, we always get so concerned about how will the economy be sustainable, and there's so many variables, but when it comes down to just like personal self-reflection, now is the time, and it's not too late if you're watching this and you're like, oh my God, it's almost over. I'm sure this will kind of go into 2021, because I feel like this idea and this light that we're seeing come up, I've heard the term light workers a lot recently as well. I feel like this is not going away. So if you haven't joined that movement yet, or you're not doing that, in inner work and reflection, I think now is a great time more than ever to just either journal, or like what are practices that you do just to kind of like get that self-reflection going?
Yeah, journaling, self-talk all the time, affirmations, also seeing yourself in the people that you communicate with. Like, let's say you have friends and stuff, and like like bringing awareness to how you would want to be talked to if they were coming to you, or like how you think you can serve your friends by being like a better friend. Like, I feel like I haven't been a great friend. I feel like I could be a better friend, a better sister, a better girlfriend. So like using other people because you care about them, but also you care about yourself, so you want to be able to serve at your highest self. So that could be great motivators.
Yeah, I think there's like a practice you can do where you're mirroring. So like whatever your actions are to someone else, like thinking about that in the other person's perspective and making sure that, you're not projecting whatever's going on with you onto other people.
Yeah.
So I love that. I think that's a great practice. And I really thank you for taking the time to just sit down with me and have a very enlightening chat. And I hope that whoever's watching this gets a better understanding of who you are and what you're all about. And I'm really excited to see this brand come out, the Wavy Self. I'm really excited to see, where you take this and, your shuffling journey continue progressing as we all do.
Likewise.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's really awesome that we were able to have this very personal chat. So I thank you again for no problem. I thank you for opening up and just being your authentic self through this, because it's been really nice to hear that side of you. Right. And I think that your followers and just anyone watching this will be interested to know that there's another side behind social media, and all we see is that like picture or that video, but we never really get down to like what we authentically are in our visions and our practices. So it's really nice to hear that side from you, for sure.
Yeah, I love that you reached out. I think the day that you reached out, I was like, I feel like no one really knows who I am on social media.
That's
and
so
the universe was like, okay, send in Sabrina.
I'm like, hey, I really want to know what you're all about. So that's so interesting that, that happened. And again, I feel like the universe works in mysterious ways. Like, you'll just have a thought and then something will happen and you'll be like, oh, okay. So that's the way it was meant to go down.
Yeah.
So I guess I'll leave off with a closing. Where can everyone find you? What are all your social channels? That way they can follow you and make sure they're keeping up with whatever you're doing.
Yes. You guys can find me on TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube, all under Sterling Torress. Everything. And I think on YouTube. Yeah. Yep, that's it. And you'll find all my announcements on all the social media pages.
Amazing. Well, thank you again for taking the time, and I wish you an amazing day and an amazing rest of your 2020, because I feel like it's going by so quick. It's gonna be 2021 like tomorrow. So again, thanks so much and take care.
Yeah, bye Sabrina.
Bye.